welcome back for episode number 147 of the weekly playback. So we are going through a heat wave. So I have the air conditioning on in my bedroom across the hallway, and I have a fan hopefully blowing some cool air into this room, because if I had the AC on in this room, because I have a window unit here because I play games with my friends in this room, so we definitely need a window unit up here because I don't have central air conditioning, and my upstairs gets really hot in the winter. There's just two bedrooms upstairs. I have what's called a Cape Cod style home. So yeah, anyway, not that you needed to know that. But yeah, so we are going through a heat wave and it is very hot. So please forgive me if you can hear the air conditioner and fan from my bedroom, which is hopefully, again, going to blow some cool air into this room. Okay, so let's just get started. Let's talk about Flowar. This is a 2023 game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Isra C and Shay S, and the art is done by Ivan Iserte and Dosum Studio, and it's published by Primi Genio Games. And this is a review copy which I received when I went to Spiel Essen in 2023. So it's taken me a little over a year, almost 2 years to play it, but I'm glad I finally did play it because I absolutely loved it. So let's talk about how it plays. So this is a worker placement game in which you will not necessarily have the same workers round to round. And just a note that the designers are the same designers as the Red Cathedral and the White Castle, which are two games I absolutely loved, which is why I really wanted this game when I went to Essen in 2023 and knew that it would be there. So the copy I received as a review copy did come with rules both in, I believe, Spanish and English. So yes. So this is a game in which you are going to have a variable turn order from round to round depending on certain tiles that you're picking up, and you're going to not necessarily have the same workers round to round. So we're going to need to talk about setup before we talk about how it plays, because the setup is really important in this game and will affect, of course, how it plays. So you are going to have this central board, and on the central board will be your round tracker marker, which is a cute little bear. And you're going to have these 4 slots, and we'll indicate what those 4 slots are for, but that's basically going to indicate who passes first and who will pick their special tile at the start of the next round. So let me just make sure I get the names correct. Yes, they're guild tile. So each player is going to have a board that looks like this, and everyone will have the same kinds of worker spots available on their board. So you'll have a worker spot here, a worker spot here, a worker spot here, and then you're going to be selecting a guild tile at the start of each round. And the guild tile you select will be placed onto your board, and that will also provide you with an additional worker spot. So I played a 4-player game of this, and you use all the tiles in a 4-player game, which I'm sure you would in any count of this game actually. So let me just show you the different tiles, and we'll go in order because the number actually matters as well. So the first guild tile looks like this, and each guild tile is going to have a certain amount here showing what it will cost you to get flowers if you do the flower collecting action when you're playing, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. And each tile is also going to have its own worker spot here with the benefit you'll gain if you place a worker over here. So that is tile number 1, and if you select this tile during the drafting phase when you're selecting, you will be first in turn order since this is tile number 1. This is tile number 2, so again, it'll show you the cost to collect flowers if you take that action, and your own special action here. And this one is to collect a coin and to get a contract from the contract petal, and we'll talk about that. Just one contract though. So this is tile number 3, and as you can see, the cost to collect flowers is getting lower as you are getting later into the turn order, because this is the person who would go third. So if you had someone with tile number 1 and 2 and then someone with tile number 3, this player would go third in turn order. And their special action is to remove discontent, because discontent, these flames, are worth negative points at the end of the game. This is tile number 4, and this is to collect 1 coin and a flower card, and for them to get flowers it will cost 2 coins. And then finally, tile number 5, if you use this worker spot, you will gain 2 points. So those are the guild tiles, and these are going to be laid out in order with workers randomly placed on them. So in a 4-player game, you are going to randomly place 5 workers from this bag on top of each tile. And the workers come in 3 different types. You have these purple workers, you have these green ones, which look like Sonic the Hedgehog, and you have these yellow ones, which are cute little pudgy foxes. So those are the different worker types. And so you're going to place 5 on each tile randomly. So sometimes you might end up with a tile that has only 2 different worker types on it, and some tiles might have 3 different worker types on it. In the game we played, we never ended up with a tile with all just one worker type. Okay, so those are the different tiles, guild tiles, and I already showed you the player board, so now I want to show you the different petals. So at the beginning of the game, you are going to place down each petal around the central circle board that we have here. We already talked about what the central board is. So here is the tile in which you're going to collect flower petals. So you're going to shuffle the flower cards and then place those out into these crates. So let me just show you all the different flowers. So flowers come, I believe, in 5 different colors. You have green, yellow, purple, blue, and white. And some flowers, as you can see, baskets have 2 baskets on them. Some will have 1, but let me just see. Here's a white one, and let me see if I can show you a blue one. And here's some blue ones. So yeah, so there's those different flower colors, and you're collecting flowers in order to fulfill contracts. So if you go to this action spot, you're going to be able to collect either a row or a column, so a row or a column of flowers that are on display. And then after you've taken your action, it will be immediately replenished. And I'm going to talk about when you place workers, what the cost is to take that action after I go through all the different tiles, because that's going to be important depending on whether any workers are on strike, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. So here we have the contract board. So on this petal rather, you're going to have different contract cards that you can pick up in order to fulfill by going to yet another petal. So here is an example of a contract card. So if you fulfill this contract card, you would get 8 coins as well as +1 point in addition to the points you would receive for fulfilling this contract, and I'll explain that when we get to that board. So if you go here with a worker, you will be able to select either a row or a column of contract cards, and you can only have a maximum of 4 contract cards at any one time as indicated by your player board, and you will store incompleted contract cards to the right of your board. Completed contract cards will be placed underneath your board upside down, and we'll talk about why you do that and what benefit you gain from those. Let's see. Here is the board where you will have workers on strike. So you, during your turn, can fire workers. If you do fire workers, you will be able to collect money, but you will also gain discontent. So for example, if you fire 2 different worker types, you will gain 7 coins, but 2 discontent, and that means that you will lose points if you do not get rid of your discontent by the end of the game. Fired workers will be placed here. Anytime you have 3 or more workers of a certain type up here, they are on strike. So whenever a worker type goes on strike, if you have that worker type in your worker pool still active and ready to be used, if you want to keep those workers that have now gone on strike, you will need to pay 1 coin for each worker you want to keep that has gone on strike. So let's suppose we are in the middle of a round and all of a sudden purple workers are now on strike because now there are 3 or more purple workers up here. If I have 2 purple workers in my pool that I still have available to use, in order to keep them, I would have to pay 2 coins if I want to keep both of them, or I can discard them up here to the strikers section of the petal. And at the beginning of the game, for the guild tile, which is not selected, so in a 4-player game, 4 of these guild tiles will be selected at the start of a round. The tile that is not selected, the workers from that tile will be placed up here. And again, if there are 3 or more of a single color, they will be on strike. So even before the round begins, if you have any workers on strike and you have workers of that color, you need to pay coins if you want to keep them. And then the guild tile that was not selected will be placed here. here, so that becomes an action spot available for someone to use if they want to use it. Only one worker can go here though. So that becomes an additional action spot available. From this board, you can also see the cost of hiring workers. So if you want to hire workers, you will be able to hire one type of worker and then pay a certain cost. So you can also do that. And the cost is indicated here. So the cost is 5 coins to hire a worker. So if, you know, during your turn you want to hire a worker, you can do that. And in order to do that, you will place your player token here. So you can only do that once per round. So you don't need to spend a worker in order to hire a worker, but you do need to place your player token down there. And that will indicate that you already did that action and you cannot do it again. So here are the different player tokens as well as the round tracker bear. So that is that petal. And then finally, the last petal, which we haven't talked about, is the petal where you can go to fulfill contracts. So you can use yellow workers in order to fulfill contracts, and you will see that each kingdom type, so there are 3 different kingdoms. You have this one, and this one, and each of them has different transportation types associated with it. And when you fulfill a contract, you will gain the reward that is shown on these small cards that will be placed at the start of the game, and they will switch halfway through the game. So halfway through the game, you are going to switch out these cards and put out some new cards there. So there will be some variability in this game. Where are those cards? Let's see if I can find them. Hopefully they are somewhere here, because that would be a shame. Oh, here we go. Are these the cards? Nope, these look like solo play cards, I think. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, actually these are the cards. Okay. So yeah, so you are going to have a card like this placed here, and then as well as a tile. And the tiles will actually tell you how many points you will get for completing a contract. So you are going to lay out these tiles, 3 of them, at the start of each round. So those do get changed from round to round, which indicate how many points you will earn for completing a contract. But above that, you are going to have these special cards, and these cards will indicate favors that you can use by turning in a contract type associated with that kingdom. So right now you don't need to pay attention to this as I'm explaining how to fulfill a contract, but I will come back to this in a second. So let's suppose I want to fulfill a contract that is of this type. So this is not associated with any kingdom, but it is associated with a transportation type. So in this case, I would have to look at which kingdom has that transportation type, and I can fulfill that contract within that kingdom. And I would have to pay a cost for that transportation type in order to fulfill this contract on my turn, as well as spending workers. So I would place a yellow worker here, and I would be like, I want to fulfill this contract, and I would turn in a purple and a yellow flower, and then I would gain the points indicated from the point tile here, as well as the coins. And if there's any special reward here, I would gain that as well. And if I used only fresh flowers, I would gain an extra point for each contract that used only fresh flowers. And I'll talk about fresh versus wilted in a second. And then this contract that I fulfilled within this kingdom would get turned upside down and be placed underneath that kingdom slot on my player board. So now on a future turn, I can turn in this card for a favor that is associated with that kingdom. So suppose this card was over here. Actually, I don't know what that one means because we didn't use that one. So let me find one that I actually understand. Okay, here's one that I understand. So let's suppose this card was over here and I had previously completed a contract associated with this kingdom. On my turn, the next time I'm completing a contract, I can turn in that card to use this favor, which means that I would not have to pay coins for transportation, for delivering flowers. So essentially, when I complete a contract using this favor, I would only need to pay for my workers that are going here. So you are basically trying to complete contracts and put them underneath your board in the various kingdom sections, and then use them again for favors, which can be very, very beneficial. There are some contracts which don't really offer you much of a reward, and for those kinds of contracts, you're going to basically be completing them in order to use them for favors, because they're much easier to complete. So for example, here's a contract. You don't actually gain any money, and in fact you lose a point for completing this contract, but it will it's very easy to complete, and you can put it underneath your player board and then use it to turn in for a favor later on in the game. So that is how that works. So I just want to talk now first about the cost of workers in each section and how that works, because that's important and that's going to depend on workers being on strike as well. So whenever you place a worker in a section to take that action, you have to pay 1 coin for your worker. So if I'm going here, for example, I'm going to pay 1 coin for my worker, as well as any coins for other workers there. So if there's already 2 other workers here, I'd have to pay an additional 2 coins. And if this type of worker is on strike, then I'd have to pay a further 1 more coin. So that's how you get to actually place workers. So let me just make sure that I have that right, because I'm actually not sure if you, yes. Yes, that's correct. So that's how that works. And that's going to be the same in this section of the board. So if I place a worker here, and this section of the board uses green workers. So if I place a green worker here, in order to take either a column or a row of flowers, I will pay 1 coin for the worker I just placed, plus 1 coin for each worker that already exists there, plus the cost it costs me to gain flowers. So again, that's going to be indicated from the guild tile that you took at the start of the round. So if I took guild tile number 1, meaning I am the first in turn order, I would have to pay 5 coins in order to do the collect flower action here. So that cost depends on your own guild tile that you selected at the start of the round. So that's how that section works. And then the contract section, similarly, this one uses purple workers. So you will pay 1 coin plus for your worker, plus 1 coin for any worker that's already there, and then an additional coin if purple workers are on strike. So again, how can you tell if a worker is on strike? So there's going to be 3 or more of them in the strike section of the board. And this game comes with these really cool standees that you can use to place on the individual petals, which will show you that those workers are on strike. Like, how cool are these? So for example, if the purple workers were on strike, I would place this on top of the purple workers board. So on this petal, I would have this placed over here, and that is a very easy visual way of seeing that the purple workers are on strike. So if I were to place a worker here, it's going to cost me an additional coin because those workers are on strike. So these standees are just really, really cool. Just a nice additional touch. Okay, so now we've talked about the individual areas. So again, you're collecting flowers. Oh, so let's talk about flowers. So when you collect flowers, you are going to place them above your player board to the left over here. And at the end of the round, if you have any flowers here and you did not place a worker here, then they would wilt. And then if at the end of that round you have any flowers here and you did not place a worker here, you did not use them rather. If you did not use them and they were already wilted, then they're gonna go away. So you have essentially 2 rounds to use flowers, or more if you keep on using a worker to keep them fresh. And you probably want to keep them fresh because again, you will gain an extra victory point if you use only fresh flowers for contracts. So you can use a worker, place it here, and that will keep all of your flowers fresh, and there is no limit to the number of flowers you can have. But if your flowers at the end of a round wilt, they will go over here because you did not place a worker here. So then they will go over here and you will not get that extra point for using wilted flowers to complete contracts, but wilted flowers still can be used to complete contracts. And the nice thing is you can complete more than 1 contract at a time as long as both contracts are associated with the kingdom in which you placed a worker. So for example, I could complete, let's say, this is a good example. So here you go. Here are 2 different contract types. One shows this kingdom and one shows this transportation type. So as you can see, we have this transportation type within that kingdom. So I could complete both of these contracts using 1 worker and gain the points that would be on that point tile for each of these contracts. And if there were fresh flowers I used, I would gain an extra point for each of the contracts using fresh flowers. So because this is the kingdom, I would be placing my worker here. And because this transportation type also falls within this kingdom, I can use this 1 worker to complete both of these contracts. And you can split up flowers between cards for multiple multiple contracts. So as you can see here, I would need 3 blues. So if I had, and I would need 1 yellow and 2 whites. So if I had one card that had a yellow and a white on it, I could use the yellow for this and the white for this. So multiple cards can be used for multiple flowers. So you can use one card for multiple flowers and be more efficient with your contract fulfillment that way. So, but you don't gain anything for like flowers you don't use. So if there's a card that had a flower on it that you didn't use, then too bad, it just goes to waste. And then of course you discard the flowers. So I think I've gone over all the different boards and actions, so I'm just going to try to give now an overview. So again, at the start of each round, you are going to draft a guild tile, which will give you a special worker spot and will indicate to you what your cost is to collect flowers during that action if you go to that board. When you place workers, you will always check to see if there are other workers already placed. You will check to see if a worker is on strike, causing you to pay more in order to use that worker, and then you will take the associated action. Contracts you fulfill will go underneath your player board so that you can then use them in order to gain favors for that specific contract type, and you will see the favors on the board over here, and those will get changed halfway through the game. So halfway through the game, after 2 rounds, you will put out new favor cards that you can use, and those favors can be very beneficial. For example, you know, one might give you a complete discount on using transportation in order to fulfill contracts. One might allow you to fire workers and not gain as much discontent but gain more coins. So the favors, you know, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of favors, and they're all very cool and will provide variability in this game. So this game plays over 4 rounds, and then whoever has the most points at the end of 4 rounds will win. And you are going to lose points if you have discontent. Now, at some point during the game, you might think, oh wow, I'm really short on money. What do I do? You can always take a loan. So you can always take a loan, and then in order to, sorry, where is the loan card here? So yeah, so there are loan cards which you can use, and that will give you some money. So I believe these are the loan cards, yes. So yeah, here are the loan cards. So you can take a loan, but you will lose points at the end of the game if you don't get rid of this card. So you will gain 5 money and you will gain a discontent. But in order to get rid of that card, you will need to spend 8 coins. I believe that that's what that action spot indicates. And you can only take out a maximum of 2 loans at once. So that's what that indicates, I believe, but let me just double check, because I actually didn't end up taking a loan. I actually won this game. I thought I was doing pretty well, and I was in fact doing pretty well, so I was right. So I never gained a single discontent. I never had to take out a loan, which was really, really nice. So I just want to double check that spot because I want to make sure I don't have that incorrect. Yeah, so at any time during the game, you may take out a loan to obtain 5 coins. To do that, take a loan card, place it in the loan area of your player board with the side featuring -3 points facing up. Then take 5 coins and 1 torch of discontent from the main supply. A player can never have more than 2 loans in their loan area. So yes, so that is what that is, and I just want to see, oh yes, paying off a loan, so I was correct. So that part of your player board is to pay off your loan. So place a worker here, and it allows you to discard 1 of your loan cards by paying 8 coins. You cannot place a worker here if you do not have loans, obviously. So yeah, so that's the one section of your player board that would allow you to do that. Yeah, and what else? I just want to make sure, yes. Oh, and here's a special part that we didn't talk about. So this section I didn't use either. So if you place a worker here during your turn on your own player board, that allows you to sell any number of flower cards, obtaining 1 coin for each flower basket featured. You cannot place a worker here if you do not have flowers left. So if you're short on money, that's another way to get money. So that's really good. Yeah, which again, I never used. So I just want to talk about, again, how the game kind of goes. So you're going to take a guild tile. You'll have a special action based on that guild tile that you took that will determine your turn order. On your turn, you'll place a worker somewhere. Placing a worker is a turn. So that's a turn, or you can sell, or on your turn you can also hire or fire a worker, but you cannot do both. Of course, we already talked about that. So yeah, so you're going to do that, and then it'll be the next player's turn, and you're just going to continue in this fashion until you pass. When you pass, you will take your player token, and then you will place it onto the center board, indicating that you will select first in the next round your guild tile. So if I was the first player to pass, I would put my player token here, and then you also have the option to use money in order to buy points. So in round 1, for example, I could sell coins, and each coin I sell would be 1 point. In round 2, it would be for each 2 coins would be 1 point. In round 3, it would be every 4 coins would give me 1 point, and then in the last round, every 7 coins would give me 1 point. So in the last round, if you have 7 coins, you definitely want to do that because coins are not worth points otherwise. So yeah, so that is basically the game. So you are getting a guild tile that gives you a special action, determines your worker order, your turn order, and then you're just placing workers on your turn, taking a variety of different actions. You're trying to collect flowers, you're trying to fulfill contracts, you're trying to fulfill contracts based on contract type so that maybe you can use some favors later on, and so on. And then at the end, when you have no more workers, you can pass and then place your worker token, your player token here, which indicated you passed, and so on. And the game will end after 4 rounds, and whoever has the most points at the end of 4 rounds will win. So I really enjoy this game. I thought it was a very clever, interesting game. Like, it can seem a little bit confusing at the start when you have all these different pedal boards with different locations, and workers don't, you know, it's not like you have the same workers from round to round, so you really have to figure out what you're doing, and then you have to also, you know, make sure you balance your money with the worker types you have, because if workers are in strike, you're going to need to spend even more, and if people are already in a certain section, then you're going to need to spend more if you want to place a worker in the same section. So it's a game in which you are really balancing your money with the actions you want to take in order to get points. So you have to be really mindful of all of that, and I just really enjoyed the puzzle of this game. Like, I really enjoyed puzzling out which worker I should use on a certain turn, and whether I should wait to use a certain worker, you know, maybe anticipating that someone else might go there. So when I was playing, I actually did calculations. So I would sit there, count up my money, and be like, okay, if I, you know, wait on fulfilling this contract, then that person might place a worker there, so then I'm going to need this many coins to go there, and I'll need this many coins probably to do this. So I would allocate like the maximum number of coins I think I would need to do a certain action, and kind of put them aside as I'm playing in a round, and that really helped me. So again, I never received a discontent. I never had to hire a worker. I never had to fire a worker. I never had to take out a loan. It was a really great game for me. So let me just talk about the points at the end and how everyone did. So yeah, in my game that I played, I gained 39 points. So this is not like a super high scoring game, because, you know, it's, you know, the points you gain are not going to be like mega points. So I won with 39, then the next player had 33, then 32, and then 15. The player with 15 had a lot of discontent, and at one point, like in the last round, they knew that they were going to lose, so they were basically just intent on screwing people over by firing workers, making more workers go on strike so that other people would have to pay more. Like, they just at that point had kind of given up, and just their goal was just to kind of screw over other workers because they knew that they were going to lose because they had a lot of discontent. So my advice would be, if you play this game, try to avoid getting discontent, because that is negative points at the end of the game. But yeah, this is just a really fun, beautiful game, and I just really enjoyed playing it, and I'm so grateful that I was able to get a review copy of this in 2023, and I'm so sorry it took me so long to play, but I had gone up to that publisher in 2023 at Spiel Essen, and I told them what a fan I was of the designer's other games and how much I would really love to play this. And it's such a shame it took me so long, because it is such a fantastic game and I love it so much, and I'm hoping to get in many more plays of this game, because I really love the puzzle of this game. I think it's just a lot of fun, and just, you know, just trying to figure out when to do things at the optimum time, really, and it's just really satisfying to play. So yeah, and it's just got beautiful components with beautiful art. I just really, really love it. So yeah, so I'm really, really grateful to have played this game, to have received a review copy, and if this sounds like something you're interested in, then you should definitely check it out. Unfortunately, I do not think it's available in America, but you should definitely leave some comments on Board Game Geek, and hopefully it can gain some more visibility in America or other parts of Europe, because this is a game that deserves to be played by more people. It is very good. So yeah, so that was Flowar. And if, you know, as always, if you have any questions about the game, please leave the questions in the comments below and I will be happy to answer them. So again, thank you to the publisher for this review copy. I am very grateful and I absolutely loved my play of it. So let's move on. Another game I played recently is Come Sail Away. So this is a 2023 game for 1 to 4 players designed by Daryl Chow and Sashi, and the art is done by Takako Takarai, and it's published by Sashi and Sashi. And this is a copy which I received as a gift from one of my followers of my channel and friends who lives in Japan. So thank you so much to this friend for sending me this game, especially because I didn't realize it was a big, kind of like a bigger box, and he actually purchased it, put it in a box and shipped it to me. Very kind of him. So thank you so much for this game because I really enjoyed it and I've already played it twice. So this game, it's like kind of like a Moncala style game in which you are trying to fill different areas of your ship so that they can set sail. So basically it says, I'll just read the description. So the aim of Come Sail Away is to guide passengers into your cruise ship as smoothly as possible, earning points in the process. So you're filling rooms, you're getting bonus points, you're moving your luggage token up when you put passengers in the rooms that they actually want to go in, and so on. So I'm going to post up a picture. Now ignore this picture because on the first play of the game, ignore the luggage track, because on the first play of the game we did the luggage track incorrectly, but on the second play of the game we did it correctly. But basically you are going to decide what your ship looks like. So each player will have like these two components that go on the side of your ship. You'll have like one of these that goes at the top, and then you're going to have the basic rooms on the ship, and the basic rooms look like this. So let me just give an example. So a player bag will look like this. You'll have all of these tiles in your own player bag, and each person is going to have one grand staircase, and then around that in some configuration, and all players will have the same configuration. So around that you're going to have your basic rooms. So the basic rooms look like this. So you're going to have 5 basic rooms in the 5 different colors. So green doors, red doors, black doors, blue doors, yellow doors. So these must be included. Then in addition to these, you will select 5 other tiles as a group, and you will decide which other 5 tiles you want. So for example, you can have this special king suite put in. You can have like a restaurant put in. You can have, for example, a movie theater. You can have a pool, a bar, or a library. So those are the different types of special tiles, and they'll all have a number in the bottom so that all players can easily pick out the tile and place it into their ship. So again, everyone will have the same ship configuration before the game starts. So everyone will have a grand staircase, the 5 basic rooms, and then 5 additional special rooms. And next to your ship, you will have this, which is for disgruntled passengers, and we'll talk about how passengers become disgruntled. So on your turn, you are going to have, well, above this board, you are going to have the tile numbers that are associated with the special rooms that everyone has on their ship. So for example, if you had the special tile, which is numbered 2, you would place the 2 over here. So you will place the 5 tiles which are associated with the 5 additional tiles that are in everyone's ship. And then you will have this pier, and this pier has all the different passenger types in it. So you will see the blue, the yellow, the green, the red, and the black passengers. And that is going to be next to this. And then on your turn, everyone is going to start with 2 of these passenger cards, and you are going to decide which of the 2 passenger cards you want to use on your turn. This game is played over 12 rounds. So for example, if I used this one, then I would have to collect 2 black meeples, 1 yellow and 1 green, and I would have to place them in a snaking order from a room that I choose to start in. So I can start from this side or this side. So if I started from this side, I would have to place my black meeple first, then my yellow in an adjacent room, and then adjacent to that one, I'd have to place a black meeple, and then adjacent to that one, I'd have to place the green. Or I can go in reverse order and place my green meeple first, then my black, then my yellow, and then my black. So you're trying to get them into the rooms that they want to go in. So for example, if I manage to place this black meeple into a room in which there is black door showing that he definitely wants to go there, then I would get to advance my luggage marker one space on this. And you're going to gain bonuses as you advance your luggage marker up on this board. So there's going to be 5 different randomly placed tiles up here. So let me just show you those. And those will be additional rooms that you can add to your board if you gain the bonus of being able to add an additional door. So you will be dealt 5 of these randomly, and then they will be placed face up above your ship. And then if you manage to come to a door as you're advancing your luggage marker, then you can place one of these on one of these slots here, which is giving you an additional space to place meeples now. And you'll see that this zigzag kind of connects the rooms. So you'll have a room connected to this, you'll have a room connected to this door, and that shows that those two are connected. So when you are snaking your meeples in Moncala style and placing them, you have to go from one connected room to another. And you are trying to place the meeples in the rooms that they want to go in so that you can advance your luggage marker. Once a room is complete, you will flip it over. And then you will be able to advance your luggage marker for some of the rooms that you flip over. So for example, let's suppose this was filled with all green meeples. I will now flip it over, and this tells me that I can advance my luggage marker one space. So again, you want to place meeples in the rooms that they want to go in, and if they do, you get to advance your luggage marker one space that way as well. Now the special tiles, they have special requirements for which kinds of meeples can go in them. So for example, this shows you that all of these spaces have to be occupied by different colored meeples. This one shows you that this and this one have to be the same color, and these two have to be the same color, but when you place them in this room, they have to be placed from going from left to right. You cannot place them in whichever seat you want once you come to that room with a meeple. Likewise, this one, these two colors have to be the same, and these two have to be the same, but when you place here, you can place them in any open seat, so that is a little bit easier. This one shows that this one has to be one color and all 3 of these have to be the same color. And these special tiles will give you some kind of a special ability when you when you fill them. So for example, when you fill, let me get an easier example. So yeah, let me get the rule book that will actually help. So yeah, it tells you on the back. So for example, if you fill your movie theater, then it says you can return all passengers on the disgruntled passengers tile to the pier matching the 2 colors on the theater. Ignore this effect if there are none. Then return the 4 passengers on the theater tile to the pier as usual. So if you filled your theater, and let's suppose you had blue and yellow meeples, and you had blue and yellow meeples on your disgruntled passengers tile, then you could return all of those disgruntled passengers to the pier, which is good because disgruntled passengers at the end of the game are worth negative points. And then you would flip this over. And flipped over tiles show you how many points they are worth at the end of the game. So you're going to play one of the 2 cards in your hand and then pass the remaining card to the player on your left and then draw a new card for the next round, so you will always have 2 cards to choose from. You are going to do this for 12 rounds, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the game will win. So at the end of the game, you are going to get points for all of your rooms that have been flipped. Oh, but before we do that, let's talk about disgruntled passengers. So a passenger is disgruntled if, for example, like I was going in order, you know, with adjacency, snaking around my ship, and I had to place a passenger here who is blue, not yellow. He would be disgruntled because he does not belong on a yellow door. So he would go on to my disgruntled tile, passengers tile, and would be worth -1 point if I cannot remove him before scoring at the end of the game. And disgruntled tile passengers, you'll also have disgruntled passengers if you're snaking around and a tile has already been flipped over and you have to place a passenger on that tile as you're snaking. So those passengers would also be disgruntled. Passengers here who are placed in your grand staircase are not disgruntled, but they also do not earn you points at the end of the game, and I'll talk about that. So let me just talk about the various bonus spots. So for here, if you manage to get here with a luggage token, you can take any one color passenger from the pier and place it anywhere on your ship. If you come here, you can either choose to take a passenger from your grand staircase and place it somewhere on your ship, or you can take a passenger from the pier and place it somewhere on your ship. And then this one, I believe, is to take a disgruntled passenger, if I remember correctly. I think that's what that one is. So there's different, oh yeah, take one of the passengers already on the disgruntled passengers tile and immediately place it on any room inside the ship. So when you get to one of these bonus spaces, you can choose which of the bonus actions you want to do. Otherwise, there's going to be the doors that you can place if you have any remaining spots on the side of your ship to place the extra door tiles which you received, and they would work like regular passenger rooms essentially. And if you get your luggage far enough, you will get points at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, you are going to score for all of the rooms that have been flipped. So you'll get points for that. Then you will score your passenger score. So you will get 1 point per passenger on a face-up room inside the ship, but passengers on the grand staircase do not count. Then you will get, oh, one thing I forgot to talk about is those special rooms that we had tiles for here. If someone completes a special room on a turn, they would get a special 3-point bonus token. So if other players also completed that same special room on that turn, they can also collect this. But once that tile has been flipped over to show that someone already completed their special room, in subsequent rounds, you would not get a 3-point token. So you're also kind of racing to complete the special rooms first so that you can get these 3-point tokens for those special rooms. So at the end of the game, you're also going to score for these, how many of those you have, your luggage track score if your luggage marker made it far enough, and then you will lose 1 point for each disgruntled passenger, and then whoever has the most points will win. So I really enjoyed this game. It is a really fun puzzle, Mancala style puzzle, in which you are placing meeples and trying to strategically place them in order to get passengers into the rooms you want, in order to not get disgruntled passengers. Just a super fun game. I really enjoyed the puzzle of this game a lot, and I really enjoy Mancala style games, so for that reason I really enjoyed it, and I'm so grateful to have received a copy from a friend and a follower of this channel. So thank you so much for sending me Come Sail Away, because I really loved it, and I believe it is available in America, so if you want to check out this game, I highly recommend it. So yeah, so that was Come Sail Away. So let's move on. Let's talk about Pixies. Pixies is a 2024 game for 2 to 5 players, designed by Johannes Gupi, and the art is done by Sylvain Trabout, and is published by Bombix. And this is a review copy which I received from Spiel Essen. So in this game, this is a set collection game, an open drafting game. So you are trying to create a grid in which you have cards numbered 1 through 9 in this formation. So I'm just going to show you. You're going to want your cards numbered 1 through 9 in this formation. So at the beginning of each round, there's going to be a number of cards equal to the number of players in the draft area. And then starting with the first player, you are going to draft a card and then place it into the number slot that corresponds to that number. So if I selected this 9, it would go into the bottommost right spot of my grid. Now, if there's already a card there, you have the option of flipping over one of these cards and then placing them one of them face down underneath that card. Now this card is validated, and we'll talk about what validated cards mean, but it's a way for you to get points equal to the number of that card. However, if you end up stuck with a 9 because you're the last person to choose a card in a specific round and you already have a validated 9, then that 9 would need to be placed face down in any other open spot in your grid. So it can be placed down in the number 5 spot, for example, but it would need to be placed face down. So now when you place a 5 on top of this, that 5 will be validated. So on your turn, when you select a number, you place it in the spot corresponding to that number. If there's already a card there with that number that is not validated, then you pick one of them to flip over, and then the card becomes validated. And then finally, the last scenario is that you already have a validated card with a certain number on it. So then that card that you are stuck drafting will get flipped over and get placed into any other open spot. The game end will be triggered once a player has filled all 9 of their slots. And it doesn't matter if there's a card that's face down in one of those slots. If it's filled, that means the game is over. So if I had a grid with 9 spots and one of them had like a card like this with no number on top of it, like that, it would still mean the game immediately ends and you go to scoring. So you are trying to score in such a way that you get the most points. So each spiral will be worth 1 point. So each face-up spiral will be worth, so each spiral that you have showing will be worth a point. Each X will be worth -1 point. And then there's certain cards which will give you 1 point per each card of a certain color. So if I had this card face up, it would give me 1 point for each blue card I have as well. And then you're also going to score for validated cards. So after, first you're going to score validated cards. So cards that are validated are cards which have a card underneath them upside down, and you will score points equal to the value of that card. So that's the first thing you're going to do. Then you will score all your swirlies and subtract your X's, and then you will score your largest area of 1 color zone. So you're going to count up the number of cards that are adjacent to each other or diagonally adjacent of 1 color. In the first round, you will get 2 points for every card in that grouping. In the second round, you will get 3 points for every card in that grouping. In the fourth round, you will get, in the third round, you will get 4 points in every card of in that grouping. So you're going to have 3 rounds, and for each color in the for each card in the largest color grouping, you will score points, and you will do it according to rounds. So again, 2 points in round 1, 3 points in round 2, and 4 points in round 3. And then whoever has the most points at the end of 3 rounds will win. So this game is meant to be played over 3 rounds, just like their other game, which was Seesaw and Paper. And whoever has the most points at the end of 3 rounds will win. So it's just a fun little drafting kind of game, card placement game. So it's a quick little game that you can play while you're like in a cafe or something like that. You just want something nice to pass the time with really cool artwork. So I remember the publisher telling me about this game and how all of these little creatures were created and then photographed. So I think that that is really very cool. So the artwork in this game is just really awesome. So they're actually photographs. They're not drawings or paintings or anything like that. So just really, really cool artwork. So this kind of game, it's the artwork that really kind of makes the game as well, because in itself it's just kind of like, a small card game in which you're doing something, but the artwork is just really, really nice to look at. So yeah, so the artwork, I would say, is like a huge reason why you would want to play this game, because it's just very, very cool. So yeah, so that is Pixies. So it's just a nice little small box card game that you can use to pass the time if you want, and it's fun. And it is luck dependent, because there's a bit of strategy involved in it, in which you might want to select a card which you already have, knowing that now you can validate a card, or you might select a card that has the same number as a card you already have that's already validated, so that you can put it down and end the game and the round. So there's a little bit of strategy involved, but there's quite a bit of luck as well. And whoever selected last in a turn in a round will then, it's kind of weird calling them rounds, because you play 3 whole games of this, which are called rounds, to determine who wins. But in one round within a round, if you were the last person to select a card, then you will select first when the next set of cards is laid out. And again, a round of the 3 major rounds that you're playing ends once someone has all 9 spots in their grid filled up. So yeah, so that is Pixies, and if that sounds like something you're interested in, or if you just really, really love the artwork, then you should check it out. So yes, so let's move on. So just a quick cat update. So thank God we placed down new pallets at colony number 1, because last week we had a day where it rained so much and that there was so much flooding in where I live, and so many streets were flooded and blocked off, like you couldn't even drive on them because of flash flooding. Cars were getting stuck in places. So I first of all had to figure out how to even get to the colony, because as soon as I left my road, the main road that it comes off of was blocked on both sides because both sides were flooded. So then I had to take some smaller roads to find my way out and make my way to the colony. And once I did, the water level was really high in the ditch. And so if those pallets had not been there, the water level would have reached the shelters. And would have gotten water into some of the shelters that are like directly on top of the pallet without any legs. So thank God for those additional pallets, which prevented that from happening. And that day the water level was really high, as you can see from this video here, but then the next day the water had receded, so it had gone back down. And the poor cats had to figure out how to jump over the water, like where the water was, because there was like not like a direct bridge for them to go up this like kind of ditch where their pallets are, and to get to the feeding area, which is higher up. So the poor kitties were like gathering up all their bravery to make jumps, which I saw them doing, which was they managed, they were okay. But I'm thinking of trying to make it so that if it ever does happen again where it rains a lot and the water level rises there, to maybe make some kind of a little bridge that might make it easier for them to get to where the food is. So I think that is the next task for colony number 1. So that's just a quick cat update. So let's move on. So for this week, we were supposed to read chapters 20 to 23. And yes, we are finally getting into more action, but as you can see, it like took more than half of the book to really start getting into some action where someone is trying to steal the Scalavert stone. So it's a very slow moving book in terms of action. But at least we're getting there. And as predicted, they did come up with a way for customers to take their drinks to go, but it was not the way I predicted. Like I predicted to go cups, like paper cups or something like that they would then throw away. But instead they have mugs that the customers can actually buy with their own names on it and then take those mugs with them, which is pretty cool as well. I've actually seen a local establishment do that, where you can buy a mug with your own name on it, and whenever you go to that establishment they will give you a drink in your mug, and they store the mug. So you would have to have the space to do that, but I have seen a local establishment that actually does that, which is quite interesting. I'm not sure how cost effective it is or what benefit the establishment actually gets from that, because you have to find the storage space for it then, if the customer can't actually leave with the mug, but just interesting, and I thought I would mention that. And then I think that there's some kind of a love brewing between Viv and Tandri. So I think that Viv is interested in Tandri. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different opinion, but that's the feeling that I'm getting from having read the last few chapters. It seems like, Viv gets tongue-tied around Tandri. She starts getting these emotions that she can't really articulate what they are around Tandri. So it seems like she's really into Tandri. At least that's the feeling I'm getting. So I think we're gonna see a romance bloom between them as well. So that's basically it. So we see that Fennis, I believe is his name, is closer to getting the Scalavert stone, or at least he wants to get closer to it. The Madrigal warned Viv about that, and I guess we'll see what happens next. So for next time, please read chapters 24, 25, and 26. And we are almost in 27, in 27, because we're reading 4 chapters at a time. Yes, so 24, 25, 26, and 27. And then I think we'll be able to finish the book the next time we read. Yes. Oh yeah, actually, you know what? We could even finish the book now. Because after that, there's only 2 more chapters and an epilogue. So let's just finish the book. So just finish the book. So read all the way to the end, including the epilogue. We might as well, and then we can start another book, because like I said, it's really easy reading and it's just going along so quickly. So let's just finish this book, and then we can decide what we want to read next. And if you're watching this, Sandra, you suggested that we read Sim Kern's fiction book, which I think is called something, The Village, Free People, or something like that. Let me just look it up. so that we can decide right now if that's what we want to read next. Because it would be cool if we do read at least a little bit of her fiction book concurrently with her their nonfiction book. So yeah, so that would actually be pretty cool, and that would work out well if we end up doing that. So let me just look up their fiction book and what the title was. So yeah, their fiction book is called The Free People's Village, a novel idea, and it actually has good reviews on Amazon as well, and I've already purchased it. So if you are able to get your hands on it, Sandra, why don't you do that? And then once we finish Legends and Lattes, we can take a break from this universe and read The Free People's Village, a novel idea. So for anyone who's watching this segment and wants to join along, after we finish Legends and Lattes, the next book will be by Sim Kern, The Free People's Village, a novel idea, which sounds really interesting. So I'll just quickly read the synopsis. It says, in an alternate 2020 timeline, Al Gore won the 2000 election and declared a war on climate change rather than a war on terror. Green infrastructure projects have transformed U.S. cities into lush paradises. Oh, very interesting. Yeah. So it says Maddie Ryan is a 24-year-old English teacher at a predominantly black high school in Houston. Teaching is just a job for her. It pays bills. She lives for band practices with her, queer punk band Bunny Bloodlust. So then she learns that something's gonna happen, and there's a bunch of protests and violence, and I guess we're gonna find out what happens. So it says when police respond to the protests with violence, the lab becomes the epicenter of the Free People's Village, an occupation that promises to be the birthplace of an anti-capitalist revolution. Considering that I think so many countries in this world need an anti-capitalist revolution right now, I think that this book would be very timely to read. So yeah, so let's make this our next book that we are going to read. So for next time, please finish reading Legends and Lattes, and then we will start with The Free People's Village, a novel idea. So that was Fiction Book Club, and let's move on. So for this week's nonfiction book club, we were supposed to read from pages 71 to 74. And the first chapter is But the Holocaust. And this chapter was all about how Jewish people learn about the Holocaust when they're younger, and how, how so many Jewish people become indoctrinated and start to believe that the Holocaust, that the Shoah was the worst genocide in history, which actually we learned is not true. And by worst I mean largest in terms of number of people killed. So it wasn't the largest genocide in history actually, but a lot of Jewish people are taught to believe that it was the one true genocide, which we see in this chapter. So we learn about how Sim was kind of indoctrinated into believing all these things growing up, and how Jewish families really make their kids really focus on this aspect of their identity, and it becomes a huge part of it, right? The author says that, Zionists will use the Holocaust as a rhetorical trump card that only they are allowed to play. They mentioned how much Jewish historiography about the Holocaust is intertwined with Zionism. And so historiography is the study of the way in which we write history. So that's really important. So if you're going to keep on intertwining the Holocaust with Zionism, then you have what we see today, where people are trying to justify an ongoing genocide and claiming that this ongoing genocide of the Palestinians is necessary to keep Jews safe from another Shoah, another Holocaust happening to them. And so that's why we learned from this chapter that Israel and, how much Zionist money is put into education and propaganda about the Holocaust. So it even says here, Holocaust museums have also silenced voices raised in support of Palestine, condemning protesters and disinviting Shoah survivors, which is, again, Holocaust survivors, and other Jewish speakers who have dared to condemn genocide. So again, this book, in this chapter, they talk a lot about how much money is poured into the Holocaust around the world, and teaching people about how it's the worst genocide. So this author talked about how we study the Holocaust stripped of context, both the context of the centuries of anti-Jewish persecution that led up to it and the context of the many other genocides enacted by white supremacist colonial capitalism around the world before and since. And they talk about why this is, and how this genocide is given more attention than other genocides because of the people who were genocided, the identity of the people who were genocided. Yeah. Yeah, and they said that wealth, power, and race factor into every genocide, which of course I believe is true. Let's see. Yeah, it says, so it says, while the foot soldiers of genocide are often fueled by hate, the architects of genocide are focused on seizing land, power, and wealth. So it says, we've learned that hate is the only pretext and justification manufactured by people in power. So yeah. So this author is trying to show like how the genocides are all similar, and how a genocide in each, area or wherever it's happened, why they've happened. So the author is talking about what kind of leads to genocide, and that's usually power. It's usually, people trying to go after resources or land and things like that, and racism, etc. This author talks about how there's so many books for young kids, like middle schoolers, written about the Holocaust, the genocide of the Jews, and there were other groups who were also part of that Holocaust as well, but not so many books written about other genocides that have taken place. So yeah. And so the author is talking about why we learn more about the Holocaust rather than other genocides. So it says, but those genocides, the other genocides, which people don't tend to learn about in Western countries, it says, but those genocides make white people feel bad about their families and country, whereas the story of US soldiers triumphing over Nazism and liberating concentration camps, well, that makes us white folk feel good about our grandparents and our nation. And since publishing is overwhelmingly dominated by white people, it is so surprising that the focus is on this rare historical moment when their ancestors were liberators rather than oppressors. So that is why way more attention is given to the Holocaust than other genocides. So it says, the genocide of indigenous and black peoples in the US at the hands of the white ruling establishment never ended. These genocides continued through ghettoization, mass incarceration, police brutality, and stochastic terrorism. And this was really interesting because I didn't know what stochastic terrorism is, so they define it. So stochastic terrorism occurs when hate speech delivered by public figures instigates hate crimes. So I knew what that is, but I didn't know the term for it. So it's really good to know what the actual term is for that. You can't always say who's directly responsible for outbreaks of hate crimes, like the rash of violence targeting Palestinian and Arab children in the US over the past year. Only the murder of Wadia al-Fayoum, 6 years old, stabbed 26 times by his landlord, will face arrest for that crime. But stochastic terrorism introduces the idea that the many journalists and politicians, including Joe Biden, who repeated the lie that Hamas beheaded 40 babies, and routinely demonized and dehumanized Palestinians in public speech, all bear some responsibility for inciting Wadia's murder. So that is what stochastic terrorism is, and it's really great to have an actual term to describe that, because I didn't know that there was a term to describe that. Like, I knew that there's all this propaganda that incites hatred towards Arabs, towards Palestinians, towards Muslims, and the people who are inciting this hatred should bear responsibility for that. So that's called stochastic terrorism. Yeah. They talked about how so many Holocaust survivors in Israel live in poverty. So it says a third of Holocaust survivors in Israel live in poverty, and Holocaust survivors in the US are arrested for protesting genocide. Yeah. No other genocide can compete with the kind of funding Zionists put up to position the Holocaust as the worst atrocity in human history. So it says, it talks about a publisher who wines and dines people and takes them to the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, and it promises that they, the authors, that they will sell, this many books. So it talks about this one publisher who promises to print and sell between 25,000 copies of a book if someone chooses to write a book for kids about the Holocaust. So here you have all this money put into, propagating how the Holocaust was the worst genocide in history, and that's why we hear so much about it, but we don't hear as much about other genocides. And then the author is talking about how someone used the words true genocide to describe the Holocaust, but then the author goes on to talk about all the other genocides which have taken place, and what's not true about them. Like, for example, the Belgian genocide in Congo under King Leopold, which killed between 8 and 10 million people. And it says, in the Americas, where European colonizers may have killed as many as 175 million people. So it says, under white supremacist capitalism, we use skin color, ethnicity, religion, class, education, health, gender, sexuality, age, and body size, among other metrics, to sort people into hierarchy of more and less human. And that is why those who are considered less human, like Palestinians, are not given as much attention. But this author is really also pointing out the fact why we care more about the Palestinian genocide than we do of the genocide that's currently taking place in the Congo or Sudan. So it says here, so the author says, it is much easier for white Westerners to view educated, wealthy, and above all, pale victims as fully human and deserving of empathy, but not those darker humans. So why do we pay more attention to the Palestine genocide than the genocide that's currently taking place in Congo and Sudan? And I have, I do share stories about those genocides when they come across my feed on Instagram, because to be honest, even with my board game account on Instagram, I get more posts about Palestine than I do board game content at this point, because I think I probably follow more content creators who talk about the genocide at this point than I probably do board game creators. But even though I still follow a crap ton of board game content creators, it's very rare that a board game post will come up in my feed. So I'm tending to get more and more posts, and have been for almost 2 years now, about the genocide, about capitalism, and all the things that someone like me would care about. So the author talks about why they believe we give more attention to the Palestinian genocide than the other genocides which are taking place today as we speak. So they say there are also over 170,000 Palestinians living in the US who are leading the movement for a free Palestine, in contrast to only 70,000 Sudanese USCNs. USCNs meaning people who live in America, the United States of America, and fewer than 20,000 Congolese USCNs. The genocide in Palestine is also extremely well documented compared to the genocides in Congo and Sudan. So we see the daily atrocities that are taking place in Gaza on our smartphones, because many Gazawis have cell phones and social media, whereas enslaved Congolese people working in artisanal cobalt mines generally do not. And that is true. Like, from the footage I have seen of the genocide that is taking place in Congo, it is horrific, first of all, like to see all of these poor people, including so many children, being enslaved in these cobalt mines, and they literally don't get breaks, they can't speak up, they can't do anything, otherwise they will risk having their limbs chopped off or getting killed, or having their family members killed. Like, it is really horrific what is happening to people in Congo and the Sudan. So it says, racism, classism, and educationism are also likely contributing factors. And then it says, the US is also absolutely financially invested in messing with Sudan and Congo's stability, but in less overt ways. Congress isn't authorizing multi-billion-dollar aid and arms shipments to Sudan and Congo every few months like it does for Israel. Another reason that so much attention is given to the Palestinian genocide rather than the Congo and Sudanese genocides. It says, gosh, in Congo, it says at least 6 million people have been killed since 1996. That's just really horrific. And I know I talked about this a long time ago. I can't remember when, but there was one time where I came across a video of a woman in Congo, or maybe it was Sudan. It was one of the two places. I can't remember which country it was, talking about her own personal experience and what happened to her. And it was truly one of the most horrific stories I had ever heard. Just really incredibly horrific. And I don't even know how the woman had the will to go on surviving and tell her story. Like, it was just so awful what she had experienced. I won't repeat it, but it was truly one of the most horrific things I'd ever heard. Yeah. So yeah, just a little footnote here. They mentioned that the leaders of Western and anti-Western regimes share class solidarity and authoritarian solidarity. True. Okay, moving on. So yeah, the author talks about some, kinds of misconceptions that existed. So for example, like, this author discovered that Jews everywhere in Europe were not suffering under equal levels of persecution at this time. And by this time, they are referring to, because they were writing a book that takes place, I believe, when did they say their book takes place? I think it was like the 1700s or something like that. I can't find that now, but they are writing a novel, a fiction novel, and during that time period, Jews were not facing the kinds of persecution that they want you to believe that they were facing in every part of Europe. So it says that at the time, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was known as Paradisus Judaeorum, or Heaven for Jews. And it says, in cities in the Ottoman Empire, many Jews were able to rise into upper class, amassing exorbitant wealth and power, which they used to enslave others. And then it talks about how Jews even had slaves. So many upper class Jews in the Ottoman Empire enslaved teenage Slavic or Hungarian girls as domestic workers. And so then they go on to further say that this demonstrates how wealth and power, not faith or ethnicity, determines who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed. Yeah. And, they mention later that history making is always political, which is true. The way history is written, the way we learn history, all of it is political, and there are agendas and agendas being fulfilled. And that's why we learn certain history and we don't learn certain history, and we learn certain history in certain ways and not in other ways, and so on. So this was just a very insightful chapter. And I just want to read the second to last paragraph. So it says, and when it comes to the Shoah, we must learn to see it in a historically accurate context, not as some uniquely evil aberration, but as one genocide among the hundreds that European colonizers inflicted upon indigenous peoples around the globe. We must include the 5 million other victims of the Holocaust in our history making: Romani, disabled people, queer people, communists, and other political dissidents, in order to truly understand the nature of fascism. And we must make crystal clear that our takeaway from studying the Holocaust is not never again for Jews, but rather never again for anyone. So yeah, very interesting. And then the next chapter is pretty short. It's called Bogus History. And this is all about how Zionists have created their own alternate history, which is very true. Like, the amount of brainwashing that Israel does and that Zionists believe is actual history when it's not is just insane. So it says, Zionist pseudo-intellectuals have produced an alternate reality history of Israel. And then they say that it's even more extensive, detailed, and utterly based in fantasy than J.R.R. Tolkien's Silmarillion. You know which book I'm talking about. It's like the book of Tolkien's, which is basically a whole encyclopedia for Lord of the Rings. I cannot pronounce it. Silmarillion, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So it says, for every event in Israeli history that makes them look bad, Zionists have cooked up an alternative version that posits themselves as victims, underdogs, or heroes. So it says, Israeli kids are taught to lionize land grabbers and ethnic cleansers like Golda Meir and David Ben-Gurion. They are incredibly fluent in fantasy-based Zionist history. And it says, the only way to counter Zionist historical misinformation is to become equally well-versed in Palestinian history. And this means reading a lot. And this is why we are reading these nonfiction books in this book club so that we can become well versed and counter this misinformation that exists. And it exists a lot in the board gaming community, which I will get into again in my rant of the week. So then, you know, they use the Six-Day War of 1967 as an example, and then they talk about what the Zionist version of this war is. So the Zionist version of this history goes something like this. Israel was a helpless little baby of a country, a total underdog in the region. Then suddenly Israel was attacked on all sides by anti-Semitic Arab neighbors who hated Israel just because it was a Jewish state. But then, in a move that surprised everyone, like David beating Goliath, the Israeli army defied all odds and destroyed the Arab armies. Now, we know that this is not an accurate version of events, and we know this from reading the 100 Years' War in Palestine. We know this from reading all the books that we've read up until now, including 10 Myths About Israel. So Israel was not imperiled by annihilation, as we know. And we know that its military was far more powerful than the surrounding militaries of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan combined, and that the war was not a defensive war. Israel launched a long-planned preemptive strike on June 5th, 1967. Now, where have we heard the terms preemptive strike recently? Bombing the airfields of the Egyptian, Syrian, and Jordanian armies, giving Israel a complete air superiority, which in that desert region in that season provided an absolute advantage to its ground forces. Yeah. So again, you know, you can read the 100 Years' War in Palestine and go into great detail about how these events unfolded and how Israel was not the victim defending itself, but was again the aggressor. So yeah, it says, you know, then the author Sim goes on to talk about more history about this event, and then it says, thus with a shrug, the US gave Israel permission to start a preemptive invasion of 3 different nations and another mass theft of Palestinian, Jordanian, Syrian, and Egyptian land. Even worse, Khalidi reports that in the run-up to the war, US Ambassador Goldberg had conveyed to Arab ambassadors that the US was mediating with Israel to defuse the crisis and would refrain it from attacking. Where have we heard these lies before? So yeah, Israel had seized control of the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, Gaza, and the West Bank, and would soon erect one of the most violent, oppressive, and blatantly racist apartheid systems in history. So yeah, so this is all history that we know because we are educated and we read books. But Zionists, you know, who are just getting all the propaganda from social media and other places of misinformation, do not read books, do not read history books, and will find their, you know, silly ways to shut you up. Oh, the world hates Israel, the world hates Jews, this is all about Jews. Like, no, it's not about Jews. And you know, time and time again, that's all they can resort to. So, you know, then this author goes on to say that yes, we need to read books in order to educate ourselves, and that's how we counter this misinformation. But then the author says at the same time, we can't afford to wait until we're all fully equipped to go toe-to-toe with the most committed Zionists in order to act. People starving to death in Gaza, facing bombardment, don't have time for you to read 10 books on their history before you speak out. So don't let Zionist bogus histories intimidate you, like I let them intimidate me for years before 2021. And the last sentence of this chapter is so important. It doesn't take a doctorate in Palestinian history to say genocide bad. Like, it doesn't take a doctorate to know that what is happening in Palestine right now is a genocide and it's bad. Like, it does not take a doctorate to say that. So all those people in the board game industry who claim to be human rights activists, who claim to be all about DEI and have never condemned the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians, for example, Eric Lang, Suzanne Sheldon, Our Family Plays Games, Rodney Smith, and so many others, they've never once condemned the genocide of the Palestinians. It doesn't take a doctorate to know that what is happening is a genocide and that you should condemn the genocide. But have they? No. But now we will get into that in a little bit when I start talking about my rant of the week. But before we do that, let's assign next week's reading. So for next week, please read up to the end of page 115. So it's a little bit longer than we've read up until now, but it's easy reading. So please read chapters 6 and 7. So please read up from page 75 to the end of page 113, please. Okay, so that will be your assignment for next week, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's reading, if you learned anything interesting or new, and how you plan on applying what you've learned so far. So please leave those in the comments below, and until next time, we will continue with our book next week. So let's move on. So the United States bombed Iran, so of course today's rant of the week is going to focus on Iran. But before we start talking about all the dumb people in the board game industry who are self-proclaimed experts on Iran and the Middle East, I know one of the things that people who like to talk about certain issues get confronted with is, who are you to talk about this issue? So who am I to talk about Iran? And who am I to talk about Palestine? So first of all, I have more of a connection with Iran than I do with Palestine. I am very passionate about Palestine because as a Muslim and as a human, I think that everyone should be passionate about Palestine, because there's an ongoing genocide and these people have been treated very brutally for over 75 years. They've been, the victims of genocide for over 75 years. They've been the victims of apartheid and so many other atrocities. And I care about Palestine as a Muslim and as a human. So why do I care about what happens in Iran? So as I've mentioned on my channel before, I am what you call a Sayyid, a Sayyida. So what that means is I am a descendant of Prophet Muhammad from both sides of my family. I am Shia Muslim. I'm the type of Muslim that you will find predominantly in Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, and then Bahrain, and to a lesser extent other countries. So my ancestors were in Iran for a very long time, because I can trace my ancestry and from the Arabian Peninsula through present-day Iran, and where they were for many, many years, and where I still have some relatives. Then my great-great-grandparents left Iran and migrated further. So my parents were born in Pakistan, but I have a connection to Iran because my ancestors were there for a very long time, and I still have relatives there. And when I was in graduate school, I studied Middle Eastern studies, so with a focus on Iran, and my thesis was on the Iranian government, the basis of Iran's government today, which is Vilayat al-Faqih. So I studied that in depth. The goal was to get a PhD, not that this matters for this video, but the reason I ended my studies and decided to leave with a master's after 3 years was just because I felt like I really did not have the stamina to complete a PhD, and so then I went to law school instead. So I left my graduate studies with simply a master's in Middle Eastern studies and then went on to law school. But those are my credentials. So am I an expert on Iran? No, but I do have a connection to the country. I have relatives who live there. I have visited Iran in 2004. I have hopes to go back. I am a Shia Muslim. I am someone who has studied the history of Iran and can at least speak more intelligently on this topic than the vast majority of people in the board game industry, at least. And yes, and I do speak Persian. So let's get into it now, shall we? So as we know, the United States bombed Iran after Israel was already preemptively bombing Iran. So as you know, in modern day history, as you should know, in modern day history, Iran has never attacked another country unprovoked. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Israel does. Iran subscribes to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They are a signatory to that treaty. Israel is not. Iran allows inspectors to come and inspect their nuclear facilities. Israel does not. Israel has up to 400 nuclear weapons. Iran has 0 weapons, 0 nuclear weapons. Yet Israel preemptively attacked Iran to prevent a nuclear attack. So what else do we know? We know that Netanyahu has been saying this lie for many, many, many years. He has been repeating the lie over and over again that Iran is close to having a nuclear weapon. This is a lie we have been hearing for like over 15 or 20 years now. There's footage of Netanyahu repeating this lie throughout many times in history, and you can see him looking really young in some of these clips, talking about how Iran is just 20 days away from building a nuclear weapon, and we're talking about clips from many, many, many years ago. So this is a lie that has been propagated by Zionists and Netanyahu and people, uneducated people like him, for a very long time. And what do we see in the industry? We see that there's a bunch of people like this idiot here who think Iran poses a threat to America. Oh, they've been, saying death to America for so many years. Oh, they don't have women's rights. Oh, like, we should all be supporting bombing the hell out of Iran because, it's such a backwards country. So let's talk about the phrase death to America. What do Iranians mean if they say that phrase? Do they mean death to all Americans? No, they do not. In fact, you will find that if you are an American who visits Iran, you will be met with so much hospitality and kindness because that's what the Iranian people are all about. There is a concept in Iran even called taraf, which means that you are always trying to outdo the others in terms of hospitality. You are always trying to up others in terms of hospitality and kindness and generosity. And that is a concept that all Iranians know and live by. And if you visit Iran, you will be met with such hospitality that you will not experience in other countries. When they say death to America, it's no different than me saying fuck Israel. It's basically saying we do not support the actions of the government. They do not mean that they want to kill every American in America. That is absolutely not what death to America means. When they say that, they are saying that because the USA has interfered in other countries and has caused the deaths of millions and millions and millions of Muslims in other countries by interfering and meddling in their politics and governments. So let's talk about Iranian history. So as you all know, in 1953, Iran elected a democratically elected leader, Mossadegh. What happened to that democratically elected leader? The US and the British overthrew that leader and reinstated an authoritarian monarch, the Shah. And the Shah was really not good for the Iranian people. He was hoarding the wealth. He was, under him, things were not good. And I'll talk about that and how things were like and how things actually improved when the Islamic government came into power at first. So they overthrew a democratically elected leader because Mossadegh wanted to nationalize the Anglo-Iranian oil company. What does nationalizing the Anglo-Iranian oil company mean? That means that more profits would have been kept by Iran than the British. So the British enlisted the help of the Americans to overthrow this democratically elected leader because they did not want to lose their profits in Iranian oil. The ironic thing is that once the US overthrew and the British overthrew this democratically elected leader and they reinstated the Shah, there was so much pressure put on the Shah at that point from the Iranian people that the British and the US then ended up getting fewer profits than Mossadegh was actually offering them. So in the end, it ended up being for nothing. So in the end, the US and the British fucked up Iran and reinstated a dictator, and in the end got less than what that democratically elected leader who they overthrew was promising them. So we have seen in the world so many examples of the British and the US fucking up other countries for their own interests, putting their own interests against, in front of the interests of other people. And it doesn't matter if that results in authoritarian regimes. It doesn't matter if that results in killing and torture and whatever you have, as long as the US and the British get what they want. And in this case, they didn't even get what they wanted. So they got fewer profits from the Shah because of the pressure that he then faced after he was reinstated as the Shah. So that is what ultimately led to the Islamic Revolution then, because once the Shah was reinstated, here again, you have a person who cares more about his own family and those close to him and preserving his wealth and his power than he did about the Iranian people. So then you have the Iranian people who supported an Islamic revolution at that point in time because Khomeini was promising and actually delivered on things that the Shah was not giving to the people. Once Khomeini came into power, education improved, literacy improved, infant mortality rates decreased, so more babies were being born and living, more women were becoming more and more educated. Women in Iran today are more educated than the men in Iran. So for anyone who says that women don't have rights in Iran, they don't know what they're talking about. More women are university educated in Iran than are men, and many of them hold master's degrees and doctorates. Iranians are known to be very intelligent. There are so many Iranians in the US and around the world who hold doctorates in engineering and law and other fields. So yeah, so you can do the research if you want to and learn about how once Khomeini came into power, things actually did improve for the Iranian people. Does that mean that the current regime in Iran is a good one? No. Like, I am someone who can acknowledge when things are bad, and there is a lot of corruption in Iran, just as there is in other parts of the world, just as there is in Israel, like with Netanyahu, who continues to prolong this genocide and do all the things he's doing because of corruption, because he doesn't want to face the charges that will be brought up against him, and he doesn't want to get arrested and all of that. So he has his own personal corrupt reasons for doing what he's doing, just as leaders all around the world do. So yes, in Iran, we do see that Baha'i are persecuted. Baha'i is another religion that kind of like continued onwards from Islam. So it acknowledges all the previous religions. It even acknowledges Muhammad as a prophet, but then it believes that there was another prophet that came after Muhammad, which in Islam is considered to be very wrong. So unfortunately, Baha'is are persecuted in Iran. However, Zoroastrians and other religions are allowed to practice freely without any issues. In fact, there's a lot of Jews in Iran who take even part in the government. They take part in the government. They're allowed to travel freely to Israel, whereas other Iranians are not, but Jewish Iranians can go to Israel and come back into Iran without any issues. And the Jewish Iranians have been very vocal against Israel and have been very vocal against Israel attacking Iran and so on. So you see that Iran today has issues, of course. It has issues with suppressing opposition, just like a lot of other countries do. But does that mean that it deserves to get bombed? No, especially when Iran does not pose a threat to the West. Who does pose a threat to the West? It's Israel. Israel, who is the country that poses a threat to the West. Israel is the country that has nuclear weapons. Israel is the country that ignores international law time and time again and commits war crimes. Israel is the country that ignores all of the UN resolutions against it and just does whatever the hell it wants. It's a rogue state. Israel is the one that people should be concerned about, but they are not. So then we have people in the board game industry who have been extremely silent about the genocide, like Eric Lang, who are now making Facebook posts about Iran. So let me just talk about some of those before I get into some of the other really stupid people we see in this industry. So Eric Lang, the first post he made in reference to Iran that I want to talk about is 4 days ago. He wrote, just in case anyone has questions about this latest brinksmanship, wag the dog. So that I think is just kind of like, yes, there is an element of wag the dog going on with Trump. First of all, we know why Netanyahu was bombing Iran. He wants to distract from the genocide that is taking place because all attention has been put on Iran now. That people are forgetting that there's still a genocide going on in Gaza, that Israel is still taking over the West Bank. More and more Palestinians are having their homes, being kicked out of their homes in the West Bank. More and more illegal settlements are popping up in the West Bank as we speak. More and more homes are being demolished. More and more West Bank Palestinians are being imprisoned and so on. So it's distracting from that, and it's distracting from the fact that Netanyahu wants to carry on with as many conflicts as he can and the genocide so that he can avoid being arrested in his own country and tried for the other charges that will be brought against him. So there's an element of that, and then of course there's an element of Trump and all of that Epstein stuff that he wants to distract from and come across as this leader who is protecting his country by preemptively bombing a country that has not attacked them. So yes, there is an element of wag the dog going on, but that post in itself, I was like, is that all you really have to say about it at the time? So that just kind of irritated me for someone who can be very vocal about other issues, but when it comes to what's happening in Israel and in Palestine and Iran is just makes posts that show that it can be boiled down to something as simple as that when there's still a lot more going on. So anyway, so then he, when the US bombed Iran, his comment then was, well, fuck. And then today he posted, Brown Lives Matter, will not be taking further questions. Like, that is not enough. I'm sorry, but that's simply not enough. Like, you are seen and respected as someone who is a human rights activist, a DEI activist in this community, you should be saying more. Like, what does a vague Brown Lives Matter mean? Does it mean you support the bombing of Iran? Does it mean you don't? Does it mean that Iranians should be allowed to live? What about Palestinians? Palestinians are considered brown in today's historical context. So what does all of this mean? But I just want to talk about a post within some comments that were made. So on the well fuck post, this Arab who's anti-Zionist wrote, war, all in service of Zionism, a genocidal racist ideology. And then this Israeli board gamer responds to the Arab person calling, basically saying like, oh, that he supports Israel and blah, 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 whatever. And then the Arab person responds saying, I'm sorry to see Eric Lang associate with genocide deniers and people who revel in the death of Palestinians. And yet again, this is what I've mentioned time and time again before, that whenever someone who's anti-Zionist comments on Eric's posts, he never acknowledges them and he never says anything about Israel. He never says anything to condemn the genocide. And here we see an example of that again. And here we see an example of where he's allowing this Zionist to just comment freely on his posts, spewing his Israeli Zionist propaganda, and is Eric stepping in to say anything? No, thus far he has not. So yeah, and do I expect him to say anything? No, because as I've said time and time again, Eric Lang is a Zionist shill and a sellout, and he just will not ever say the words genocide bad. He will not condemn the genocide. He will continue to remain silent about that while making these like kind of vague posts about what's happening without taking a hard stance on the issue. So yeah, saying Brown Lives Matter will not be taking further questions is just a cop-out. It's just completely a cop-out. So yeah, so that's one thing I want to say. And now I want to talk about all the really dumb people that exist in the board game industry. So after the US bombed Iran, there was this one person who was on my Facebook friends list. And I just want to talk about how these weirdos and randoms ended up on my Facebook friends list. So when I first became a content creator back in 2020, I got so many friend requests from people who were regular board gamers or designers or publishers in the industry, and I just started accepting these friend requests without any kind of vetting system. So here I have ended up with to be friends with a bunch of people in the board game industry who I don't even know, I've never met in person, and I really should go through my friends list someday and try to weed out all these people, but it would be a lot to go through. Like, I have over 2,000 friends on Facebook. It's just insane. So firstly, I just want to point out this one idiot whose name is Frank. So I shared a post on Facebook which said, so there's this person named Abby Martin, who, if you know who she is, she's really awesome. She is like a journalist and she reports a lot about what happens in Palestine. So she made a post which said, no country should have nuclear weapons, but calling a nuclear Iran an existential threat, while the only country to nuke civilians and its genocidal proxy bombing everyone stockpiles them, is pure empire brain delusion. Iran's only real threat has always been its sovereignty. So I'm just going to post screenshots so you can see it. So I shared that on Facebook and I wrote this. Iran has never been a threat to the West. And I'm talking about modern day history, mind you. It's the West that's always been a threat to the Middle East. If you believe otherwise, then you're just stupid and need to educate yourself. I mean, should I be calling people stupid? Maybe not, but people are stupid if they don't know this. Like, truly, if you are someone who eats up the propaganda that Iran is a threat to you, then I'm sorry, but you are stupid. Like, you have the ability to educate yourself and learn what Iran is like, learn the history of Iran, learn how the West fucked up Iran just like it did so many countries in the Middle East, and learn about who the real threat is, which is Israel, and how the US and the West is basically Israel's puppet. On this post, someone by the name of Frank commented, and then immediately after commenting, he blocked me so that he would not see my response, and then his comment disappeared. But his comment was something along the lines of how Iran is dangerous for women, Iran doesn't care about women's rights, Iranians shout death to America, Iran is a threat to the West, and how as I as a board gamer should have known better, and that he's disappointed that a board gamer like me is so stupid. So then I responded to him, but by that time he had already blocked me, so he couldn't see my response. So typical Zionist, uneducated fool who leaves a comment and then will not wait for the facts to be presented to him and then runs away. And that fool, his name is Frank, and I have like over 300 mutuals with this person. I don't know who he is, but we're not friends on Facebook anymore since he blocked me, but clearly an uneducated fool who, and I hope that people will take note of people like this who exist in the industry and will hopefully unfriend them and not give them the time of day, because this is someone who is clearly very uneducated. So I took the screenshot from his profile before he unfriended me. So after he left a stupid comment on my post, I quickly went to his profile, saw this, took a screenshot, and by the time I went back to mine to respond to him, he had blocked me. So I got this screenshot in the nick of time, but unfortunately I don't have a screenshot of the comment he left on my profile, because once someone blocks you, I think it removes their comment, so I can't see it anymore. And then, but more so than him, I want to focus on this other idiot who's been commenting on my profile, and his name is Wim Tavernier, and he lives in the Netherlands, and he is a self-proclaimed serious historian, and he is a history teacher in high school, and he also owns his own publishing company, which is called Tavern Games. So going to Board Game Geek, I went and looked at what games Tavern Games has published. They have 2 of their own games, and then I think they localized another game. So it's not a big publishing company, and you know, the 2 small games they published, no one's ever heard of them. But here you have a self-proclaimed serious historian who teaches history. And then he started commenting on my post, and it turned into this long discussion. And he basically believes that Israel is not an apartheid state, and that, what else does he believe? That Jews are safer in, that Muslims and Arabs are safer in Israel than Jews are in the Middle East and other Muslim countries. And he engaged in pink washing, talking about LGBTQ rights in Israel and how that justifies, like, you know, Israel's actions, I guess, and being the state that it is. Like, it was just insane. Like, so this guy just made so many posts, and he would not at any point list his credentials. So at one point I suggested some books to him. So I said, you know, if you think Israel is not an apartheid state, so then tell me how it's not an apartheid state. Would he? No. And then I suggested some books to him. I was like, listen, there are books that are written even by Israeli scholars if you don't want to read books written by Palestinians. And one of the books I recommended to him was 10 Myths About Israel by Elan Papp. And then he responded saying, no serious historian would read a book that starts with that has the word myths in it or something like that. Just utterly stupid. So then I said, okay, if no serious historian is going to read that, then, you know, tell me what your credentials are, because Elan Papp has a lot of credentials. So what are yours? Did he ever share his credentials? No, because then of course he went on to say how he doesn't need to share his credentials because he's not insecure and all of this bullshit, blah, blah, blah. So then he presented some weak, vague statements to talk about how Israel is not an apartheid state. And then I responded with a longer comment, including some articles which clearly show him that Israel is an apartheid state. And did he read those articles and respond to that? No. So this is what you have in the board game industry. You have people who think that they are experts on Iran and Israel, who don't know shit about either country and the truth of either country, but will still freely give their opinion on it, and then expect you to just fall in line. And, you know, as someone who is pretty outspoken in this industry and seems to be the only one who has been very outspoken about this genocide, I'm the one who's going to get the brunt of, you know, the hate that comes and you know, having to deal with all of this bullshit. So when I post comments on Facebook, on my personal Facebook page, and I have people from the industry responding, you know, I'm the one who's the bad actor, and people will unfriend me and unfollow me, and I'm the one who has to deal with all of this fallout, even though I'm the one who's like educated on the topic and is trying to get other people in the industry to be educated on the topic. Like, it's just insane. Like, I just can't deal with the stupidity in this world anymore. So yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen now that the US has bombed Iran, but Iran is still retaliating, and it's retaliation. It's not attacking, it's retaliation because Israel attacked Iran first, but Iran is still retaliating against Israel. And yeah, and now we have this in addition to the genocide. And in addition to this, don't forget that Israel is still bombing Lebanon and Syria, and Yemen even. So don't forget about those countries as well, and don't forget about the genocide. So it should be pretty clear to everyone who the aggressor is, but it's just, the world is just filled with really stupid people. And it's not just Americans clearly who are really uneducated and dumb. Like here is this person who's from the Netherlands who teaches history, yet as a serious historian who won't read history books about Palestine to actually educate himself, but just claims to know a lot about Palestine, but won't state what his sources are or where he learned this misinformation. So yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that exists, and the kind of people that exist all over the world that we have to deal with. But there's just so much of it in the board game industry, and it's just really, really disappointing. And I just tie it back to the board game industry because we've seen for so many years where this industry is trying to act like it's really progressive, that it cares so much about human rights, that it wants to see equality and it wants equity within the industry, and inclusion. Yet how can there be equity and inclusion when you are silent about a genocide, and silence is complicity? How can there be equity and inclusion when you are showing the world, showing the board gaming community that Muslim and Arab lives just do not matter, that you will not condemn a genocide, that you will not very clearly and explicitly condemn the attacks on Iran, that you will, that this doesn't matter to you, like that you will go on living your life. And we've seen people at the No Kings protests with signs like, oh, if Harris won the election, then we'd be having brunch right now. And that's actually true. If Harris won the election, you would be having brunch right now while a genocide is ongoing, while the US capitalist government supports terrorism in the Middle East, while the US capitalist government supports bombing Iran. Do you honestly think that if Kamala Harris was president, that things would be that much different? Things might be a little bit different for like trans people in America, but in terms of foreign policy, in terms of what's happening in Palestine and Iran, things would not be much different. Maybe the US wouldn't have bombed Iran, but it certainly would not have stopped Israel from doing what it wants to do, because Kamala made that very clear when she was running, that she would not get in Israel's way of anything, and that Israel is allowed to do whatever it wants. And we know US history and how the US has fucked up the Middle East and Iran before and just doesn't care. So yeah, so just a lot of really stupid people in this industry, and I'm just really, really tired. So yeah. So, there's just so many people who claim to be experts and who've never even met a Muslim person, don't know any Iranian people, have never met a Palestinian, have never read a book about the Middle East, have never read a book about Iran, have never read a book about Palestine, yet will claim to know everything. And it's just really disappointing because, again, if it came to Black Lives Matter or trans lives matter, this is not the attitude that would be adopted by these so-called DEI and human rights activists in the industry. They would be encouraging people to read books. They would be encouraging people to boycott Zionists. But are they doing that? No, they are still buying games and supporting their Zionist buddies like Kids Table Board Gaming and Burnt Island Games and games by Isaac Shalev. They're still supporting Zionist content creators like Quackalope and Board Game Co. and so many others. So yeah, so it's just very disappointing. So we'll see what happens. But when it comes to Iran, like, fucking educate yourselves, read some books, learn about the history of Iran, learn about how America has fucked up so many countries. Just learn, just educate yourselves. And once you educate yourselves, educate your friends. I think that the next book we should read for book club should definitely be about Iran, given the situation. So I'm definitely going to start looking into books about Iran that I think we should read for our nonfiction book club. But anyway, that's my rant of the week. Like, I'm just tired, and I'm just really, really sick of stupid people in this industry. Like, really, really sick of them. So yeah, so just please try to avoid being friends with dumb people like this. And if you see Eric Lang make posts and you're a fan of Eric Lang, like fucking call him out when he has bad takes, and fucking call him out for allowing Zionists to spew their propaganda on his posts. Like, he may not be friends with that Zionist who's commenting, but he's certainly not deleting those comments, and he's certainly not stepping in to say, hey, don't allow that Zionist bullshit on my post. So, and if he's not stopping it, then he's allowing it, basically. So, and if you are someone who actually cares, like, please say something. I can't be the only person who keeps on saying something because no one's fucking listening then. You know, there's power in numbers, and one person alone can't do anything by themselves. So yeah, so that is all. That is my rant of the week. So let's move on. So for this week, there are going to be 2 questions of the week. The first question of the week is, what is a game that is by 2 fairly well-known designers that has gone under the radar? And you know, it could have gone under the radar for any number of reasons. So this game, Flowar, is designed by Shay S. and Isra C., who are the designers of the Red Cathedral and the White Castle. And this is a fantastic game that is by a foreign publisher, which has unfortunately gone under the radar and unfortunately did not get published in America and just has not gotten the attention that it deserves. But it is a really, really fantastic game. So please let me know what other games you know of by well-known designers that have gone under the radar, and please list their names in the comments below. And the second question of the week is, what is your favorite game that has the Mankala mechanic in it? So where you're dropping one meeple off in one location, then another meeple off in another location, and so on, like 5 Tribes, like Come Sail Away, like that game by that Ostia, like Ostia by that one Japanese publisher, the name of which I cannot remember now, Uchibakoya. So yeah, so let me know what your favorite game is with the Mankala mechanic in it. And until next week,